Now, keep in mind there are differences between, depending on what type of business you are. So if your primary services are technology, your policy is going to be a little bit different than if you're, a more traditional type of business. So for the majority of businesses out there that are buying a cyber insurance policy, whether you're a construction company or a restaurant or an accounting firm, the type of policy that you're going to buy is going to be what's considered a standalone cyber insurance policy. And when I look at a cyber insurance policy, there's hundreds of them out there, as you probably are well aware. But when I'm reviewing a policy, I want to make sure that there's usually 5 key areas covered. So the first area that most people are familiar with are going to be the cyber liability coverages. So let's say you're a business, you're holding data, you fail to protect it, or let's say you fail to protect your network and you spread a virus to somebody else and you're sued. This part of the policy is going to cover your liability. So think of defense expenses, damages, if you're pulled into a lawsuit, the lawyers to defend you. Same thing go with regulations. So if you violate a law or regulation.
Is that what's called third-party risks?
Third-party risks, third-party liability.
Giving other people money when something bad happens.
Yes, yeah, essentially. So third-party liability. So, if somebody comes against you and says, hey, this breach hurt us, we want you to make us whole. That's what it's designed to cover. And I think what makes cyber insurance policies a little bit confusing is that it also includes first-party coverages. So you've got the third-party liability, and then you've got the first-party coverages. So once you get past the third-party coverages, the second thing I look for are going to be your direct expenses. So let's say you're a business that has a data breach, and okay, now what the heck do we do? Typically the first-party coverages are going to cover things like bringing in a lawyer to figure out, okay, what are our obligations? The legal landscape's getting pretty out of control. So unless you're specialized in this area, you're not going to know who to notify, what to do. And they're also going to bring in forensics. So a forensic investigator is going to help you figure out what happened. Is it still going on? Is it stopped? They're going to work very closely with the lawyer that you hire, because anything that they produce is going to essentially become a privilege work product if you are sued, and you do have to trigger those third-party claims. It's also going to cover things like notification expenses, the stuff that we typically receive as consumers. When somebody's had a breach, it's going to be the credit monitoring, whatever the law dictates. So that's the second piece. The third piece is going to be things that help the business get back to normal. So dust is settled. Let's say it's a ransomware event, because that seems to be what's happening to most businesses these days, unfortunately. So the ransomware has been contained. You figured out what data has been exposed. You started the process to notify, but now you need to restore your data. You need to restore the network. You need to get back to normal, whatever, at whatever degree you can. Maybe you had to spin up some additional servers to, set up a temporary network while your core network was compromised. All of those expenses are going to be covered in either your data restoration or your data restoration and network restoration coverages. So these are the things that are going to help a business get back to operational. The fourth piece is going to be the business interruption expenses. So again, kind of going down this tree here, the next thing that's going to happen once you're back up and running is that you were down for a period of time. So this coverage is going to help you recoup the costs of lost income while you were down. So traditionally, the most important thing for running a business was a business's location. Not so much anymore, especially with what we're going through now. But, if a building burns down now, everybody's set up to work remotely. But what if plan B, which is your remote work environment, goes down? You can't operate. So this is going to cover the lost income, extra expenses. Some policies will even cover things like payroll. Now, the last and fifth piece that's often built into a cyber insurance policy is cybercrime. So very different than, again, switching the intent of the coverage away from data compromises into a theft of money. So whether it's social engineering, somebody being tricked into paying a fake invoice, whether it's somebody hacking into a bank account, things like, we're starting to see utility fraud. Let's say somebody hacks into your internet service provider or a hotspot and spins up a huge bill, or they use your network for cryptocurrency mining, and they get into a cloud environment, spin up a whole bunch of virtual machines, and using tons of data. Covers those types of things. Haven't seen any claims on that part of the coverage yet, but you can see how it's possible. So as you can see, these policies are consistently expanding, and there's no base policy that every carrier is
Exactly.
using.
I think that's kind of, that's a really great general explanation. And we'll drill down a little bit on some of those I have questions about, but you allude to kind of a really important point to like someone who's not from the insurance world. Like people look at their car insurance or even like general liability business coverage, and you're like, this is a cookie cutter thing that's basically the same. You're just deciding which price you want to pay from all the people you get quotes for. But cyber insurance is really different in the sense that like every single business is different. What it needs to protect, is there like regulatory compliance issues? Is there a big, third party risk? Is there a bigger first party risk situation? What might happen if something bad happens that you might need to mitigate? So it makes sense why, well, first of all, most businesses, it seems like, don't have it, but it also makes sense why they need it, and it's hard to get it, and they need the right information, because there's a lot of kind of like generic information that doesn't really help people, or worse, like puts them in a situation where when something bad happens, they don't have the right coverage or have no coverage at all.